And I'm going to start, I've started the recording.
Good morning and welcome to our session entitled A Look Back at the Presidents of SELA, Leaders from Georgia and Other Southeastern States. My name is Camille Mccutchen and I serve as SELA Archivist and am also a recent past president of the association. I will be the moderator for today's session. I am joined by past presidents Gordon Baker and Linda Harris, and current president Tim Dodge. The slide that you see on your screen has some information about our presidential terms. During this program, each person will talk briefly about serving as SELA president and will address the following items. Each person will explain his or her evolution outside of SELA and what contributed to their experiences within the association, what leadership style each person developed through these associations that led them to become leaders within SELA. And also they will talk about how they progressed as leaders in the association. And finally, they will share some major accomplishments they had while serving as SELA president. So we're going to begin in chronological order in terms of our service as president. So Gordon Baker will be our first person to speak this morning.
Thank you, Camille. I think to become an active member of any association is very important in our professional careers. To work as a leader, you must first be a volunteer in an association or in anything that you do. And to be a volunteer, you must be ready to do any type of work, and then you must be ready to step up to lead when called upon. To be an effective leader, you must be organized. And I think that's one of the things that has helped me along my career. I've had the honor of being the leader of the 3 Georgia Library-related associations. I first became active in the Georgia Library Media Association when I became a school media specialist. I served as the district chair for the Macon and South Metro area. Next, I was elected to treasurer of the association, and then president-elect, and then president. One of the things that really helped me was I was selected as GLMA's first executive director and secretary. By serving in this capacity, I became able to know the nature of the members of the association. I knew who was active, who was willing to serve, and who would be a good leader. Next, I became active in the Georgia Association for Instructional Technology, and in that professional organization, I served as treasurer and president-elect and president. In fact, I've served twice as president of that. Again, I worked with the membership committee chair and became familiar with our members and who really wanted to work and who really was just looking to be a lurker. I've always been a member of the Georgia Library Association, but I was an inactive member for many years. But then I became chair of the school library division for 2 years. And then I moved up into the trustees and friends chair when I became a member of the board of trustees of the Henry County Public Library. And eventually I became treasurer and then became president and president-elect. And in 2002, Bob Fox and I were selected to serve as the administrative services coordinators of GLA. Here again, I worked with the membership. I suggested names for committees to our incoming presidents, and I just knew who would be a hard worker for GLA. I've always been asked about my leadership style, and I've always had a participative or shared leadership style. I've done this in professional organizations, and I've done this in my work career. When I was a school media specialist, I used this style with my media committee, with my paraprofessional, and when I became Dean of Libraries at Clayton State, I had a leadership team, and we made the decisions jointly, but then I, in essence, had the final say, but with lots of input from my team. And with the Southeastern Library Association, I first became a member back in the early 80s when Charles Beard encouraged me to join. And before long, I was chair of the School and Children's Librarian section for several terms. And then I became chair of the Trustees and Friends section for several terms. I was elected the secretary of SELA, the treasurer of SELA, president-elect, and then president of SELA. And in 2004, Bob Fox and I became the administrative services coordinators of SELA. Again, I got to know the members of SELA and those people who would be right to serve on committees, and I recommended those names to our incoming presidents. I served as president of SELA from 2012 to 2014. And some of the major accomplishments that happened during my term as president: the SELA Facebook page was started. We had our second summer leadership conference in Birmingham, and our speakers were author Carolyn Haynes and Dr. Melissa Johnston. We had a joint conference with South Carolina in Greenville, and there I was able to introduce ALA President-elect Courtney Young. We concluded our year with a joint conference with Georgia, the Georgia Como in Augusta. Also during my term, we accepted and scheduled a joint conference with the Alabama Library Association at Point Clear, Alabama. We established stipends for the webmasters, and we began the process of reactivating the position of association archivist. I also, prior to being president, I served on the committee to create the Hal Mendelson Award, recognizing individuals for strong leadership and hard work, and I was able to present the second award to Camille Mccutchen. I think, though, the highlight of my term was receiving the 2014 Mary Utopia Rothrock Award for exceptional contributions to librarianship in the southeastern United States. This came as a complete surprise to me, and I will always be honored for having received this award. And that concludes my portion. Next, we'll hear from Camille Mccutchen.
Thank you so much, Gordon. I have been a member of SELA since 2000, and that's the first year I became active in the association. But prior to that, I was involved with the South Carolina Library Association. Within SCLA, I chaired the Library Instruction Roundtable, the Legislative Committee. I served as secretary of the association and also as treasurer. And serving in these roles on the state association level provided me with the experience and the confidence to pursue service in a regional association. Also, around that time that I was beginning to become involved in SELA, I was also involved with the American Library Association's Library Instruction Roundtable. I was chair and then co-chair of the Top 20 Committee, which that committee just has a fascinating role. It reads hundreds of articles that are published about library instruction each year and selects the top 20 articles that were published during that year. So I really learned a lot about leadership with that role, because my committee members were across the country, and we did most of our work virtually. And I also served as secretary and archivist for the Library Instructional Roundtable as well. Prior to becoming president of the Southeastern Library Association, I served in various roles. I've served as either chair or co-chair of the Intellectual Freedom Committee, the Planning Committee, the Conference Committee, the Nominating Committee. I've chaired the Library Instruction Roundtable, the college and university section, and the school and children's librarian section. I've also served as state rep for South Carolina, and I've served as secretary and before I became president of SELA. I feel like that volunteering is very important, as Gordon addressed. And when you have different experiences, they help you to understand the different facets of how an association works. And then this gives you a great grounding in pursuing other leadership possibilities. So as far as my leadership style goes, I was thinking more in terms of qualities. I feel like that communication is a big key to leadership. Making sure everyone understands what's going on. They feel comfortable asking questions and participating. And so inclusiveness is also a very big aspect of my leadership style. I want buy-in from everyone involved. And I'm not afraid to ask questions or ask for help. I think this is how you learn. And each experience builds on the one before. And so those are some of my viewpoints on leadership and how I have tried to be a leader within SELA. During my term as president, we had two conferences. One was in with the Alabama Library Association, and it was in Point Clear, Alabama. And the other one was in Athens, Georgia, and that was with Georgia Como. During my time as president, the Louisiana Library Association became an active SELA chapter once again, and SELA members in the inactive state chapters of Arkansas, Florida, and Virginia elected representatives to serve on the SELA board. A web page was created for the SELA state representatives, and a job description for the state representatives was approved by the SELA board. Our SELA website was redesigned and launched, and we updated the Constitution and Handbook, and we also approved the SELA and State Association Joint Conference Guidelines. And finally, we changed the name of the SELA Online Research Librarians Roundtable to the SELA Electronic Resources Roundtable. So this sums up some of the accomplishments that SELA had during the time that I was president, and a little bit about my experience prior to SELA and while being involved with the association. So we're going to now hear from Linda Harris. Linda?
Thank you, Camille. My term as SELA president was from 2016 to 2018. And I became involved with SELA in the late 70s after I was active with the Alabama Library Association and the American Library Association. I was, as Gordon mentioned earlier, sort of a lurker with SELA at first because I was so heavily involved with the Alabama Library Association and the American Library Association, serving on several committees. I was on some committees as a member, but didn't have any leadership responsibilities I did become a charter member of the newly formed African American Issues Roundtable, which was formed at our Jekyll Island meeting in 2000. I had just started being the state representative for Alabama, representing the Alabama Library Association with SELA, and I served 2 4-year terms. And I really became involved with SELA after that. I credit my work with Alabama Library Association, where I served and chaired on several committees, and I was really active as the membership chair. And I initiated several things to encourage, and really we had a lot of people to join during my term of service. I am so honored that I was nominated as president of SELA, and I credit Gordon Baker and Camille Mccutchen for seeing that I could serve in such a leadership position. I try to continue their excellent work during my term of office. We continued having our meeting in Birmingham. We would have a biennial meeting of a leadership conference in Birmingham, which we did in 2017. And we also met in Greenville, South Carolina for our biennial meeting. I would like to say that our work with SELA, you know, we try to encourage cooperation, since we are a regional association, and I think that that's where we've really been helpful to is to encourage our young leaders and become involved with the association, and I think that SELA provides that. So I appreciate the having been served to serve as SELA president. And I now turn it over to Tim, who's our president from 2018 until the present time.
Thank you. Hello. Yeah, I'll just mention that I joined SELA in 1992, but my first 7 years, I was also more of a lurker than anything else. I didn't become really active until 1999, and I attended my first spring leadership conference, which we held at that time. And then I became active shortly after that in the Intellectual Freedom Committee and the Legislative Committee. And I'll talk a little bit more about my progression through SELA a bit later. I'd like to talk a little bit right now about my evolution outside of SELA and what contributed to my experiences. I got interested in library associations early in my career, although I did not start actively serving in offices and committees until I came to Auburn University in 1992. Starting in 1980, I had been a member and occasionally attended a workshop or conference offered by groups such as the New Hampshire Library Association, the New England Archivists, the Society of American Archivists, and then moving from the far northeast to the far southeast, the Florida Library Association and the Dade County Florida Library Association. In 1992, I hit the ground running the Alabama Library Association, first by joining a couple of committees and by more or less accident getting appointed to my first chairmanship. Following the membership form application literally, I indicated an interest in serving on the Publications Committee. To my surprise, I received back a letter from the president informing me I was now the chair of the Publications Committee. This is the first of a long line of leadership positions in the Alabama Library Association, including, among others, chair of the, chair of the College, University, and Special Libraries Division, association secretary twice, and president in 2004, 2005. Since then, I've remained active and am now serving a multi-year term as moderator of the Government Documents Roundtable. Also in 1992, I joined the Alabama Association of College and Research Libraries, in which I too found myself serving in various capacities, including president twice, 2000 to 2001 and 2008 to 2009. My first term as president, I shepherded AACRL into incorporation as a nonprofit organization following National Association College Research Libraries directives for state chapters to either merge with their state library association or incorporate as an entity separate from but affiliated with ACRL. This is due to liability concerns expressed by ACRL management. I became active in the American Library Association starting in 1994, primarily because my library director at Auburn University suggested it in his written comments concerning my annual evaluation. I soon became active in the Government Documents Roundtable and served as Federal Documents Task Force Coordinator as well as Secretary. ALA membership also led me to serving on the ACRL Government Relations Committee for at least 5 years as an active member and also as Secretary for the ACRL Chapters Council. How all of this contributed to my experiences within SELA? By the time I became active in SELA, remember that was 1999, I felt quite comfortable serving in leadership positions. Every leadership position requires adjustment, preparation, hard work, the ability to prioritize, and good communication skills. This experience outside of SELA has certainly helped cultivate those leadership skills in me. Briefly about my leadership style and progress in SELA, if I had to describe my leadership style, I would say it is conscientious, flexible, realistic, and cooperative. My previous experiences helped me develop this style, but it should also be noted each leadership position varied in how this was done. Some positions were rather easy, while more than a few were challenging. I would suggest conscientiousness was a trait I brought to my leadership positions, but it certainly was cultivated and expanded. I've always tried to do the right thing and to follow as best possible existing guidelines or procedures or bylaws. However, I've learned to be more flexible since conditions or circumstances sometimes force one to stretch the boundaries or modify procedures as needed. Sometimes this may be due to the fact that a committee or other unit one is heading has few active members. On some rare occasions, it may be due to the fact that one or more unit members or officers is not doing his or her job, thus requiring one to step in and do some extra work in order to see an important project through. I think this ties in with being realistic. To have a vision or goal is good, but not if it proves to be unachievable. Even if the vision or goal must be modified, it still can serve to guide one or provide direction, but one needs to avoid perfectionism since it can lead to disappointment and perhaps for others to resentment. I believe I have always been a cooperative person, but serving as a leader in SELA and other professional associations has confirmed to me that cooperation is perhaps the single most important leadership attribute. Unless one is a dictator or serving in a truly tiny association unit, one will not get much accomplished without the active cooperation of others. In other words, teamwork tends to produce the best work. Fortunately, I have found the vast majority of my experience working with others to be one of cooperation. It's amazing how many people of goodwill are out there. That has been one of my prime motivations and enjoyments as president of SELA these last couple of years, and all of the other leadership positions I have held. How did I progress as a leader in SELA? It started out as first being an active member in both the Intellectual Freedom Committee and the Legislative Committee. Over the years since 1999, I have had the privilege of serving as Intellectual Freedom Committee Chair, Chair of the Government Documents Roundtable, and Chair of the University and College Library Section, and also as the Alabama State Library Association representative before being nominated for and elected as President-elect in 2016. Very briefly, a couple of accomplishments, major accomplishments as President of SELA. Obviously, this is very dependent on the many dedicated and excellent members of the SELA Executive Committee and SELA Board who usually did the actual and sometimes hard work needed. Probably the two biggest accomplishments were hosting an entirely virtual joint conference and organizing several ways of observing and celebrating SELA's centennial anniversary in 2020. The former was necessitated, as you all know, by the virus pandemic. I have to give President-elect Melissa Dennis major credit and thanks. This is especially stressful because Melissa and the folks at the Georgia Library Association had already been heavily engaged in planning for an in-person conference to be held in Macon when the pandemic erupted, throwing everything off balance. Camille Mccutchen deserves major thanks and recognition for spearheading a multi-pronged approach to the SELA Centennial that included everything from commemorative t-shirts to the digitization of photographs and early documents, formation of the Centennial Club, interviews with past presidents and editors of the Southeastern Librarian, and also honorary longtime members, not to mention this president's program and more. Of course, a number of other individuals provided crucial assistance working on these projects too, but Melissa Dennis and Camille Mccutchen provided the crucial vision and leadership and determination to see these important initiatives through. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Tim. I think we have time for one brief question that I want the group to answer. What advice would you give to a future SELA leader?
Hi, this is Gordon Baker. I would recommend the future, the individual, first thing they need to do is to raise their hand and volunteer. And then they need to volunteer and work in all the different phases of SELA to learn the association. I think the key to success in any association is to learn the background of it and the fundamentals of the operation.
Thank you, Gordon. Linda or Tim, would either of you like to comment as well?
This is Linda Harris, and I agree with Gordon on his recommendation. In fact, looking back on my career with the Alabama Library Association, I worked on so many levels with that group, and that really helped me with SELA when I joined SELA and worked with it. So it's important to work from the ground up, and that really develops your leadership skills. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim, did you want to add anything?
Sure, thank you. Perhaps the most helpful things I can suggest are to be able to set priorities and to be flexible. On one level, the responsibilities of serving as president can be daunting. My approach is to, whenever possible, prioritize problems or major tasks. This can be an informal, or you can actually drop a list for yourself of a timeline. There always will be surprises and perhaps an occasional crisis, which may throw you off balance, but generally, if you already have a list of priorities, you can make decisions on what to drop if necessary, and then when to resume once the new top priority has been taken care of. This is closely related to flexibility. I'm not saying to bend with the wind every time, but you do want to avoid rigidity since it can cause needless stress both for you and others. Sometimes there's a good solution, or at least a good compromise that can be reached if you remain flexible. You need to care, yes, but do not care so much that you end up with a much greater problem, a much longer lasting problem than necessary. And finally, another thing I would suggest is to be well organized. We all have different ways of keeping track of meetings, the need to submit reports and other documents, and just managing our responsibilities. I am the first to admit my office is a mess, especially since I tend to print things out. However, I generally do have an informal system of order, and so am able to retrieve the document, or am able to consult my paper calendar, and so keep on top of association business most of the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Gordon, Linda, and Tim, thank you so much for being with us today and talking with us about your leadership, your experiences in SELA, and your time as SELA president. We hope that we've provided you with some insight regarding our experiences serving as president of SELA. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we wish you a successful conference experience.